"You lied to me!" the young girl screamed, her trembling hands clutching the edge of her father's jacket. He didn't answer. He just stood there, cold, distant, like a man watching his world collapse but pretending it wasn't happening. And in that silence, something broke. Not just a secret, not just a lie, but a truth so dark that it could destroy everything they had ever built. What if the daughter he'd spent his life protecting was never really blind at all? And what if the one person who could expose him wasn't family, but the maid he thought was invisible? This is where our story begins. Tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? Go on. Drop it in the comments below. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, because trust me, what's about to happen will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about truth, family, and love. The morning sky hung low over the Hamilton estate, that kind of pale gray that makes even the sunlight feel heavy. The mansion sat high above the hills of Connecticut, surrounded by walls so tall they seemed built to keep more than people out, maybe to keep truth from escaping. Maria had been working there for just 3 weeks, quiet, careful, invisible. That's how she liked it. In a place like this, silence wasn't just golden, it was survival. Every sound in that house told a story. The echo of polished shoes down the hallway meant power. The whisper of expensive silk brushing against marble meant wealth. But the sound Maria remembered most was the tapping, soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingertips on wood. Every night from the far end of the West Wing, where Mr. Hamilton's daughter stayed. They said the girl, Lily, was blind, fragile, delicate, hidden away from the world after an accident years ago. But sometimes, Maria swore she could feel eyes watching her, sharp, aware, unblinking. That morning, when Maria walked into the study to dust the bookshelves, she noticed something odd. A single teacup, half empty, sitting beside the grand piano. But it wasn't the cup that caught her attention. It was the reflection on the polished lid, a pair of eyes staring straight back at her from the piano bench. Lily's eyes, wide open, focused, and tracking every movement she made. Maria froze, her breath hitched. She had been told Lily couldn't see, that she never even looked in anyone's direction. But those eyes, there was no mistaking it. They saw her, and in that silent second, something passed between them, an unspoken question neither dared to voice. Then, just as quickly, Lily turned her head away and whispered, "Please, don't tell my father." Maria's hand shook as she set the duster down. She didn't understand what she had just witnessed. But deep inside, she knew one thing. Whatever secret this house was hiding, it was only beginning to surface. That night, the rain came. Heavy, relentless, drumming against the glass walls of the Hamilton mansion like an angry confession that refused to stay quiet. Maria lay awake in her small servants' quarters, staring at the ceiling, replaying that moment in the study again and again. Lily's eyes, the fear in her voice. "Please, don't tell my father." What could that mean? Why would a blind girl beg for silence about being able to see? The next morning, Maria climbed the marble staircase with the breakfast tray, her footsteps echoing softly through the West Wing. The door to Lily's room stood slightly ajar. From inside she heard humming, low, haunting, almost childlike. Maria knocked gently. "Miss Lily, it's breakfast." No answer. She stepped inside. The room was a portrait of innocence. Pastel curtains, porcelain dolls, sunlight spilling through the window. But something was wrong. The dolls were arranged in perfect alignment, every one of them facing the door. And on the floor, drawn in faint chalk, was a large circle with symbols Maria didn't recognize, almost like markings. Then, from behind the canopy bed, Lily's voice. "You weren't supposed to see that." Maria turned, and there she was, standing tall, head slightly tilted, eyes wide open, and focused. "Lily," Maria whispered, "you can see." Lily's expression hardened. "I can't. Not when he's around." Your father?" Lily nodded slowly. "He thinks it's better if I pretend." "Pretend?" Maria's voice trembled. "Why?" "Because I saw something I wasn't supposed to," Lily whispered, stepping closer. "And if he knows that I still can—" She paused. Her gaze darted to the security camera above the door, the tiny red light blinking steadily. "He'll make sure I never see anything again." Maria felt her heart pound. The air in the room seemed to thicken, heavy with unsaid truths. "What did you see, Lily?" The girl hesitated, her voice barely audible now. "The night my mother died." A single flash of lightning filled the room, and for the first time, Maria realized this wasn't just a house full of secrets. It was a house built to bury them. The storm had not stopped for 3 days. Thunder rolled like a warning from heaven itself, shaking the windows of the mansion, and with every strike, Maria felt the house come alive, whispering secrets through the walls. She tried to keep her distance from Lily after that night, but the girl's words haunted her. "The night my mother died." Maria needed answers. That morning, she carried a basket of linens through the east wing, a part of the mansion the other maids never entered. The hallway was long, lined with portraits of the Hamilton family, each one grand and lifelike, staring down from gold frames. Near the end of the hall, one portrait stood apart, a woman in a deep blue gown, eyes full of sorrow, Lily's mother. The plaque below read, "Eleanor Hamilton, 1982-2019. Maria stopped. The woman's painted eyes seemed to follow her, almost pleading. She took a cautious step closer. The frame was dustless, freshly polished, but the rest of the portraits were untouched. Someone had been here recently. Then she noticed it, a faint crack in the wall just behind the painting. She reached out, pressing her palm against the edge of the frame. It moved slightly, like a door. Her breath caught. She pushed. The portrait swung open to reveal a narrow passageway, dark, silent, cold. Inside, faint red lights blinked along the ceiling, hidden security wires, and there, half hidden beneath a draped cloth, stood a small projector. Maria pulled the cloth away. The machine whirred softly. It was still on. A video feed flickered onto the opposite wall, grainy footage of the mansion's rooms, every hallway, every corner, including Lily's bedroom. Maria's stomach turned. Every move, every breath of that child was being watched. Then, a sound, a footstep, behind her. "You shouldn't be here," a man's voice said, low, dangerous, calm. Maria froze. Slowly she turned. Standing in the dim light was Evan, the estate manager, a man who rarely spoke, always lurking in the background. "This part of the house is restricted," he said, his eyes narrowing. I was just cleaning." "No one cleans this wing," he interrupted, stepping closer. "Mr. Hamilton doesn't like people near her portrait." "Why not?" Maria whispered. Evan smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides knives. "Because some things," he said, "are better left unseen." He reached past her and closed the secret door, the click echoing through the silence. "Go back to your quarters, Maria," he murmured, "and if you value your job, never mention what you saw." As she walked away, her hands trembling, Maria caught one last look at the portrait. This time, she could have sworn Eleanor Hamilton's eyes were wet with tears. The next morning, the house was eerily calm. The storm had passed, but the silence that followed felt heavier, as if the mansion itself was holding its breath. Maria carried a tray of tea to the study. Inside, Mr. Hamilton sat alone, staring out through the tall glass windows that overlooked the rain-soaked garden. His reflection shimmered faintly against the glass, and that's when Maria noticed it. He turned his face away from the window, almost violently, like a man disgusted by his own image. She'd seen people afraid of many things: darkness, silence, death, but never mirrors. "Sir," she said softly, "would you like me to—" "Leave it there," he said sharply, cutting her off. His tone was cold, his voice deeper than usual. She placed the tray on the table and stepped back. He didn't look at her. His gaze remained fixed on the surface of his desk, where a photograph lay half hidden under a stack of papers. It was Lily, smiling, holding something in her hand, a pendant shaped like an eye. "That was taken before the accident," he said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. "Before the blindness." Maria hesitated. "She's a lovely child, sir." "Lovely?" He gave a bitter laugh. "She's all I have left, and yet—" He stopped himself, his fingers curling into a fist. "Never mind." She wanted to ask more, but his tone had a finality that warned her not to. "Sir," she began carefully, "may I ask what happened to Mrs. Hamilton?" The question hung in the air like a dropped knife. Slowly, Mr. Hamilton raised his eyes, and for the first time, Maria saw the hollow sadness behind them. "Eleanor fell," he said flatly, "down the stairs, the night of the storm." He looked away again, his jaw tightening. Lily was the only one there. Maria's breath caught. "She saw it?" "No," he said quickly, almost too quickly. "She didn't. She couldn't have." The lie sat heavy in the air. Then something unexpected. He stood and walked to the fireplace. A large, ornate mirror hung above it. He reached up and turned it around, facing the wall. Maria frowned. "You don't like mirrors, sir?" He froze for a second, his back still turned. "Mirrors don't lie," he said quietly, "and I've had enough truth for one lifetime." When she left the study, Maria's pulse was still racing. She didn't know what haunted that man, or what secret those mirrors were hiding. But deep down, she felt it. The story of the blind girl wasn't about blindness at all. It was about what had been seen. That evening, the storm clouds returned. The wind rattled the tall windows, whispering through the curtains like a voice too faint to understand. Maria had just finished tidying Lily's room when she saw it, something glinting faintly beneath the little girl's pillow. She froze. It was the pendant from the photograph. The silver eye shimmered under the lamplight, its surface carved with strange, almost ancient patterns. "Lily," she whispered, "is this yours?" The girl tilted her head, her pale eyes searching the air as though listening for something invisible. "Mama gave it to me," she said softly. "She said it helps me see things." Maria's breath caught. "See things?" "Mm-hmm." Lily smiled faintly. "Not like Daddy thinks. Different." Before Maria could ask more, the girl tucked the pendant back under her pillow and pulled the blanket over her small frame. "Good night, Miss Maria," she murmured. Maria whispered back, "Good night, sweetheart," but her mind was far from calm. Later that night, when the mansion fell silent and the halls were swallowed in shadow, Maria found herself drawn to that room again. The pendant seemed to hum softly, as if alive. She hesitated, then reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the silver, a sudden chill raced up her arm. Images flashed, too fast, too blurry to make sense. A staircase, a scream, a woman's voice crying, "Lily, don't move!" Then darkness. Maria gasped and dropped the pendant. It clattered to the floor, spinning in circles before coming to rest. Her heart pounded. She bent down slowly, trembling, and that's when she saw it. Tiny words engraved on the pendant's back, barely visible even in the dim light. "Truth watches in silence." Maria shivered. The words felt less like message and more like a warning. The next morning, she tried to tell Mr. Hamilton about what she'd found. But when she mentioned the pendant, his expression hardened instantly. "You touched it?" he asked, his voice suddenly sharp. Yes, sir. I found it in Lily's room and—" "Never touch that again." His tone was low, cold, final. "Sir, I only thought— Do you hear me, Maria?" He stepped closer, eyes burning with something between fear and fury. "That pendant belongs to the dead." She froze. "To Eleanor," he said, almost whispering now. "It was on her neck the night she fell." The words hit like thunder. Maria backed away slowly. Her mind raced, her pulse hammering in her ears. The pendant, the storm, the mirror, the accident. None of it was random. Something about this house didn't make sense, and she was starting to believe that the one person who saw everything might not have been blind at all. It was just past midnight when Maria, the maid, tiptoed into the east wing of the mansion, the part no one ever entered after dark. The air was thick, almost humming. She wasn't supposed to be there, but the storm outside had triggered the alarm system, and she needed to check if the windows were sealed. Her flashlight cut through the darkness, flickering against portraits of the family. James Kingsley, the billionaire, stern and proud. Grace, his late wife, frozen forever in a smile that looked more like a warning, and little Ella, the blind daughter, standing between them with her eyes hidden behind thick glasses. Maria froze. Something wasn't right. The portrait, the one she'd dusted 100 times, was different. Ella's eyes were open, not clouded, not vacant, open, alert, seeing. At first, she thought her mind was playing tricks, but as she leaned closer, a faint reflection glimmered from the painted pupils, as if someone had layered glass over them, recently. That was the first moment Maria began to suspect that nothing about this family was real. The next morning, she watched Ella during breakfast. The girl sat silently, listening to the clinking of silverware, but then, when James dropped his napkin, Maria saw it. Ella's head turned instantly toward the sound, eyes following it with precision. No blind child reacted that fast. Maria's heart pounded. She had cleaned this mansion for 5 years. She'd seen its walls, its secrets, its silence. But this was different. She couldn't unsee it. That night, Maria waited. She knew the father would lock Ella in her room, as he always did after dinner, telling the world it was for her safety. But as soon as his footsteps disappeared down the marble corridor, Maria crept toward the room. Inside, Ella sat by the window, her glasses off, her gaze fixed on the moon. "Ella," Maria whispered, "can you see me?" The girl froze. Then, slowly, she turned her head, her eyes, clear, bright, blue as her mother's, locking directly on Maria's face. "Please," she whispered, voice trembling, "don't tell my father." Maria stumbled back, whispering, "But why? Why would he lie about this?" Ella's voice cracked. "Because he doesn't want anyone to know what I saw the night my mother died." Maria's blood ran cold. There it was. The secret no one dared to touch. The one that had haunted the mansion since the day Grace Kingsley fell from the balcony into the garden pond. Maria realized she was in too deep now. There was no turning back. Somewhere in that mansion, hidden behind all the luxury and silence, was a truth so dark, so devastating, that a father would rather the world think his daughter was blind than let her see it again. And Maria, the maid who only wanted to do her job, had just become part of the story she could never escape. By dawn, the mansion looked peaceful again, a golden sunrise spilling through spotless windows, the illusion of perfection restored. But beneath that silence, danger was already breathing. James Kingsley, the billionaire, stood by the window in his office, staring into the garden pond where his wife's reflection once danced before she died. He clenched his jaw, feeling it, the shift. Someone had seen something. Someone was getting too close. He could always feel when control began to slip. A faint knock echoed behind him. "Come in." Maria entered quietly, eyes lowered. She'd barely slept. The memory of Ella's clear, terrified eyes haunted her. She could still hear the child's whisper. "Don't tell my father." James turned, his voice calm but cold. "You've been working here for years, Maria. Loyal, trustworthy. But lately—" He paused, narrowing his eyes. "You seem distracted." Her breath caught. No, sir. I'm fine." He stepped closer, his cologne sharp, expensive, invasive. "Good. Because in this house, secrets are dangerous, and those who can't keep them, don't last long. Maria nodded, trembling. Understood, sir. But the moment she left his office, she ran straight to Ella's room, heart racing. Ella, she whispered urgently, what happened the night your mother died? The little girl's lips quivered. She hesitated, then pointed toward the garden pond below. She was arguing with him, Ella murmured. I heard them shouting. And then she fell, but... Her voice lowered, trembling. Someone else was there too. Maria froze. Someone else? Ella nodded slowly. A woman. She wore red shoes. I still see them sometimes, when I close my eyes. Maria felt a chill crawl down her spine. There were no women on staff who wore red shoes. None, except Camille, the billionaire's new business partner, the woman who moved into the mansion only weeks after Grace's death. Maria realized this wasn't just about a lie to protect a child. It was about covering a crime, one buried beneath money, power, and fear. But before she could speak, the door handle turned. James stood there, silent, eyes dark, expression unreadable. Maria, he said softly, come with me, now. He led her to the security room. Inside, dozens of screens flickered, surveillance cameras showing every corner of the mansion. You've been loyal, he said, his tone almost kind. But loyalty, Maria, it's something I verify, not assume. He pressed a button. The screens rewound footage from the night before, showing Maria entering Ella's room. Maria's heart stopped. James turned slowly, his face lit only by the cold glow of the monitors. Tell me, Maria, what were you doing in my daughter's room? At midnight. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Then James leaned in, whispering, If you value your job, you'll forget whatever she told you. My daughter is... unwell. She imagines things. He smiled, but his eyes were dead. Understand? Maria nodded faintly, but deep down she knew this wasn't just about a lie anymore. It was about survival. As she left the room, the security lights flickered, and for a split second on one of the screens behind James, the camera glitched, revealing a shadowy figure near the garden pond. A woman, in red shoes. And just like that, the mansion had awakened again. The ghosts of its past were stirring, and this time they were watching. The mansion had changed. The walls seemed to breathe now. The lights flickered without reason, and silence felt heavier, as if the air itself carried a warning. After that confrontation, Maria knew she couldn't survive this house by pretending anymore. So that night, she went back to Ella. The little girl sat on her bed, holding her mother's old locket, the one she never let go of. Inside it was a tiny, faded photo of Grace Kingsley, smiling in front of the same garden pond that had become her grave. Maria knelt beside her. Ella, she whispered, we have to be careful. Your father knows. Ella's small hands trembled. He told me to stay quiet, or he'd send me away again. Maria's eyes widened. Send you away? Ella nodded. To the school, the one in the mountains. No one ever comes back from there. Ella nodded. To the school, the one in the mountains. No one ever comes back from there. That night, as James hosted another lavish dinner for investors, his voice echoing through the grand dining hall, laughter masking secrets, Maria slipped out through the side door, following a path lit only by moonlight. She needed to see for herself. The garden pond was calm, still reflecting the mansion's glowing windows. But when she knelt by the water's edge, something caught her eye. A small shimmer beneath the surface. She reached in. Her fingers brushed something cold. Metal. It was a bracelet, engraved with initials. G.K. Grace Kingsley. Maria gasped softly. She'd found it, proof that Grace didn't simply fall. Someone wanted her gone. Suddenly a shadow moved behind her. She turned sharply, flashlight beam slicing through the darkness, and there, standing among the trees, was Ella. "Ella, what are you doing here?" But Ella didn't answer. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Maria," she whispered, voice shaking, "someone's watching us." Maria's pulse quickened. She looked toward the mansion. The windows were all dark now. James's dinner had ended, and somewhere behind them came a quiet click. A camera. Someone was taking pictures. They ran, through the garden, across the marble path, into the servants' quarters, their breath ragged, footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. But when they reached Ella's room, it was already open. The window curtains fluttered, the glass was shattered, and on the floor lay the locket, open, empty. Ella was gone. Maria screamed her name, but her voice was swallowed by the night, and in that silence, in that unbearable stillness, the mansion seemed to whisper back, "You should have stayed quiet." Maria sank to her knees. The girl who could see, the girl who carried the truth, had vanished. And in her place, only the shadow of a secret remained, one buried deeper than the pond, and older than the mansion itself. Maria hadn't slept. She couldn't. The echoes of Ella's screams still haunted the halls, like a melody that refused to fade. Every corner of the mansion felt alive, breathing, listening, remembering. By dawn, the search had begun. Police cars lined the driveway. James Kingsley stood on the balcony, face stone cold, eyes hollow. He told them the girl was missing, but Maria knew. She wasn't missing. She'd been taken. While everyone else scoured the woods, Maria went somewhere no one dared to go. Grace's old room. Dust lay thick on the vanity. A cracked mirror reflected her trembling face. And in the center of the room stood a large chest, locked, old, carved with initials she now recognized. G.K. She pried it open. Inside were letters, faded photographs, and one small, leather-bound diary. The last entry was dated 2 days before Grace's death. Maria opened it slowly and began to read. "If something happens to me, it won't be an accident. James thinks I don't know, but I've seen the documents, the offshore accounts, the experiments." Maria's hand froze. "He calls it Project Lumen, says it's for charity. But I've seen the children, the ones they bring here. He tests the drug on them. It blinds them, sometimes permanently, and now he wants to use it on our daughter." Her heart dropped. Grace had discovered everything. The blindness. It wasn't natural. It was manufactured. Maria's eyes widened as she flipped to the next page. The ink was smeared as though written in panic. "I told him I'd go to the press." He smiled and said, "You won't get the chance." A sudden thud echoed in the hallway. Maria froze. Footsteps, slow, measured, coming closer. She clutched the diary, darted into the closet, and held her breath. The doorknob turned. Through the sliver of light she saw James Kingsley enter, calm, composed, his hand holding a glass of whiskey. He stared at the empty chest, then at the open diary pages on the table. He smiled. "Curiosity," he murmured, "is a dangerous thing in this house." He turned toward the window, as if speaking to the empty air. She was never supposed to find out. None of them were. Maria's pulse hammered in her ears. He knew someone was listening. And then, as if confirming her worst fear, he said softly, "Maria, come out." Her breath caught. How did he know? She held still, not moving, not breathing, praying he'd leave. But instead, he walked to the closet door and placed his hand on the knob. A long silence. Then, a knock echoed from downstairs. He paused, lowered his hand, smirked, and walked out. Maria collapsed to her knees. Her whole body trembled. She looked back at the diary, now her only proof, her only weapon. But in that moment, she noticed something strange. The last page wasn't blank. Folded between the paper and the back cover was a photograph of Grace standing with another man. Not James. The man wore a red tie, the same man from the night of the gala. the business partner, and behind them, in the reflection of the glass door, stood Ella, her eyes wide open. She could see the truth was worse than Maria ever imagined. The blindness was never a condition, it was a cover-up, and the one person who could destroy everything was the child they all thought was helpless. The night had swallowed the mansion whole. Rain lashed the windows, and thunder rolled like war drums. Maria moved quietly through the hallway, clutching the diary against her chest. Her footsteps were careful, deliberate, each one heavier than the last. She knew what she'd just uncovered could destroy the Kingsleys. But first, she had to get out alive. Downstairs the lights flickered. The grand chandelier swayed slightly as if the storm itself was inside the house. When she reached the back door, she froze. A new keypad had been installed. Metal, digital, with a red blinking light. Locked. "Since when?" she whispered. The voice behind her answered softly. "Since this morning." Maria spun around. It was Clara, the head housekeeper. Older, loyal, her face unreadable. "Mr. Kingsley said we needed to tighten security," Clara murmured. "Because of the intruder." Maria's throat tightened. "There is no intruder, Clara. He's lying. But Clara raised a hand. "Don't say it. Walls have ears." The older woman's gaze flicked toward the ceiling corner. Maria followed her eyes and saw it. A small black dot, a camera, every room, every corridor. They were watching. Clara leaned closer, whispering fast, trembling slightly. "I can get you out, but you'll need to trust me." Maria hesitated. "Why would you help me?" Clara's eyes glistened. "Because I served Grace. I knew what he did to her, and I swore I'd never let it happen again." The storm cracked the sky open. A flash of white lightning flooded the room. For a moment Maria saw Clara's fear, raw and desperate. "Meet me at the basement in 10 minutes, Clara whispered. "Bring nothing but the diary." And just like that, she was gone. Maria darted back upstairs to her room, the mansion's walls humming with low mechanical sounds, like it was breathing, alive. She could feel James's presence everywhere. At her door she paused. The handle was warm. Someone had been inside. She stepped in slowly. On the bed sat a note. Handwritten. "You shouldn't have opened her chest. You don't understand what you've done." And beneath it, a small velvet box. Maria's hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside was a single silver key. On the tag, B2, Laboratory. Her pulse quickened. Laboratory. In the basement. That wasn't part of the mansion's floor plan. She tucked the key into her pocket and ran. The basement door creaked open. Damp air hit her face. The smell of bleach and metal filled her lungs. Clara stood at the bottom of the stairs holding a flashlight. "Quick," she whispered, "before the cameras reset." They descended, each step deeper into something the house wasn't meant to show. At the end of the corridor, a heavy door, engraved Lumen Lab. Maria slid the silver key into the lock. It clicked. The door groaned open, rows of machines, monitors, empty hospital beds, and inside a glass chamber, a little girl's shoe, Ella's. Maria gasped. "No!" Clara stepped forward. "He's been preparing her, ever since Grace died." "Preparing her for what?" Clara looked at her, face pale as the lightning outside. "For the same treatment that blinded the others." Maria's knees buckled. The diary slipped from her grasp. On the monitor beside the glass chamber, a video feed flickered to life. James Kingsley's face. Calm. Cold. "Maria," he said, "I warned you not to go where you don't belong." Behind him, Ella sat on a hospital bed, eyes wide open but crying. James smiled faintly. "Now you know the truth. Tell me, will you protect her from me, or from herself?" The game had changed. The mansion wasn't just a prison, it was a laboratory, and the child they thought was blind might not be a victim, but the experiment that survived. The air inside the basement felt thick, like breathing through a secret. Maria's hands shook as she stared at the live feed of Ella crying behind glass. The little girl's tears shimmered under the sterile light, but her eyes, they weren't blank anymore. They were watching. Every movement, every word, sharp, aware. Maria pressed closer to the screen. "Ella?" she whispered. The girl looked up, as if she heard, and then she raised her hand, traced a single word on the glass in trembling fingers. "Run." Clara clutched Maria's shoulder. "She's warning you. We have to leave." Maria's voice broke. "He's hurting her, Clara. We can't just—" "Listen to me," Clara hissed. "You don't know what she is." Maria froze. "What do you mean, what she is? She's a child." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "No, she's not. Not anymore." Before Maria could speak, the basement lights flickered. Then, one by one, they went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. A deep, mechanical hum filled the room. The glass chamber hissed open. And then, silence. Clara's flashlight wavered in her trembling hand. The beam cut across the room, landing on the empty glass cell. "Where is she?" Maria whispered. Clara's voice shook. "She's out." From the far end of the basement came the faint sound of bare feet padding across the cold floor. Slow, deliberate. "Ella," Maria called out. No answer. Then a whisper, childlike, but colder than before. "You shouldn't have come here, Miss Maria." The flashlight flickered again, and in that flash, they saw her. Ella stood a few feet away, drenched from the storm, eyes glowing faintly under the emergency light. Her expression was calm. Too calm. "I tried to warn you," she said, "but now he knows." Maria's voice trembled. "Knows what?" "That you opened my mother's diary." She turned slowly, her gaze empty now. "He said, anyone who reads it must forget." The basement door slammed shut above them. Clara screamed, grabbing Maria's arm. "Go! Go now!" They ran down the side corridor, the hum of machines rising behind them like angry bees. As they reached the staircase, a siren blared overhead. Red lights flashed. Through the alarms, Maria heard a voice, deep, metallic, familiar. James Kingsley, broadcasting through the speakers. "You can't save her, Maria. She's already part of me." The power surged. Sparks flew from the ceiling. Maria stopped halfway up the stairs, panting, her heart pounding in her chest. "Part of him? What does he mean?" Clara's face was pale. "He used his own DNA in the experiment. Ella, she's not just his daughter. She's his creation." Maria's world tilted. The diary, the blindness, the experiments. It all led back to one monstrous truth. James Kingsley hadn't lost his wife and daughter. He'd rebuilt them. And the little girl standing in that basement wasn't blind. She was seeing more than any human ever could. Maria didn't run that night, because deep down, she knew there was nowhere to run. The mansion had become alive, cameras blinking like eyes, doors locking like jaws. And upstairs, in the storm-lit study, James Kingsley poured himself another drink, smiling, watching, and whispering, "Let's see how far love can run before it breaks." Thunder split the sky in half. The storm outside had become a living thing, roaring, clawing at the glass walls of the mansion. Maria and Clara reached the top of the stairs, gasping, soaked in fear and sweat. The hall was empty. Only the ticking of the grandfather clock filled the silence, loud, deliberate, like a heartbeat counting down. "Where is he?" Clara whispered. Before Maria could answer, the doors to the study opened by themselves, a slow creak, and there, standing behind his desk, calm as the storm raged behind him, was James Kingsley. He was holding a glass of brandy in one hand, and a small velvet box in the other. "Good evening, Maria," he said quietly. "As I recall, you weren't scheduled to be in the basement." Maria stepped forward, her voice trembling but defiant. "What have you done to her?" James tilted his head slightly, a smile ghosting across his lips. "Which her do you mean?" "Ella," Maria said. "She's terrified of you, and she's not blind." James's expression didn't change. Instead, he placed the velvet box on the desk and slowly opened it. Inside, a small silver locket, the same one Maria had seen in Grace's portrait. "She sees everything," James murmured, "even what she shouldn't." Maria's hands clenched. "You made her this way, didn't you? You made her into something unnatural." He sighed softly, walking toward the window. "When Grace died, I lost everything. Do you understand what it means to watch the person you love most vanish in your arms? To hear her beg you to save her, and know that you can't?" His voice cracked for the first time. "I refused to accept that. So I didn't." He turned back toward her, eyes glinting like wet glass. "I recreated her. I recreated the child she carried. I gave them back to the world. And you call that unnatural?" Maria's voice broke. "You didn't bring them back, James. You built copies." A sharp silence. His hand tightened around the glass until it shattered, blood dripping between his fingers. "Do not call her a copy." For a long moment no one spoke. The rain softened, replaced by the hum of the mansion's security systems coming to life. Then Clara stepped forward. "James, this isn't science. It's obsession." James laughed bitterly. "Obsession built this world, Clara. Obsession cured disease, conquered space, created life where there was none. Why not love?" Maria stared at him. "Because love can't be manufactured." James's eyes darkened. "Can't it?" he whispered. "Grace thought so too. She called me a monster. She tried to take Lily and run that night. But she didn't make it out, did she?" The words froze the air. Maria's throat closed. You said it was an accident." He looked at her then, truly looked, his expression empty. "It was. Just not the kind the police report described." Behind him, lightning struck the lake, a blinding flash, and for an instant Maria saw his reflection in the glass. Two shadows behind him, a woman's silhouette, a child's hand. But when the light faded, he was alone again. James walked closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "She wasn't meant to die. She interfered with the experiment. She tried to destroy the machine, and she touched the current." He looked away. Lily saw it happen. Maria's stomach twisted. "That's why she pretends to be blind, because she saw you." James interrupted softly. "Because I made her forget." A single tear slipped down his face. "I thought blindness would protect her from the memory. I thought if she couldn't see, she couldn't remember." His voice broke. "But the body remembers what the mind forgets. And now, the sight is coming back." Maria's heart pounded. "She remembers everything, doesn't she?" He nodded. Slowly, and then with a strange calm whispered, "That's why she has to be reset." "Reset?" Clara's voice rose. "You're going to erase her memory again?" He turned toward her, eyes gone cold. "Not just her memory." He reached for a control pad on the desk, and on the wall a monitor flickered to life, showing Ella standing motionless in the dark basement. Red lights blinked behind her. The chamber she stood in was filling with vapor. "No!" Maria screamed, lunging for the desk. James stepped between her and the controls. "She'll thank me one day. She's your daughter." He shook his head. "She's my creation, and creations don't suffer." Maria struck his arm, sending the tablet crashing to the floor. It shattered. Sparks flew. The screen blinked out. For the first time, James Kingsley's composure broke. He stared at Maria like a man staring into fire. "You have no idea what you've just done." Maria backed away, shaking. But it was too late. Somewhere deep below, alarms began to wail. A mechanical voice echoed through the hall. "System override. Memory containment failure." The lights flickered, then went red, and from the basement, faint but rising, came the sound of a little girl's laughter. Not playful, not innocent, unhuman. That night, the mansion began to tremble. The machines woke before the man who built them could silence them, and in the ruins of a father's obsession, his daughter remembered everything. The alarms kept wailing long after the thunder stopped. The house was alive now, groaning, shaking, its heartbeat synced with the machines buried beneath it. Maria stumbled down the stairwell, Clara close behind, both gripping the rail as red emergency lights pulsed through the corridors like blood through veins. "Ella!" Maria shouted. Her voice echoed, swallowed by the mechanical hum rising from below. They reached the basement doors, locked. The keypad beside it blinked erratically, flashing the same words again and again. System reset in progress. Maria's trembling fingers reached for the wires, ripping open the panel, sparks biting her skin. She yanked two cords together, and the door hissed open. A gust of cold vapor escaped. Inside, the laboratory was unrecognizable. Tubes glowed blue in the darkness, strange mechanical veins stretching across the walls, and there, standing barefoot in the mist, Ella, eyes open, wide, unblinking. Maria froze. "Ella?" The girl turned slowly toward her. Her eyes glowed faintly silver under the lab lights, like the reflection of the moon on glass. "Maria," she said softly, "I can see you." Clara gasped. "Oh my God!" Maria rushed forward, kneeling beside her. "Ella, sweetheart." But the girl tilted her head slightly, her expression calm, detached. "He told me you'd come." "Who?" "My father." A shadow moved in the doorway behind them. James. His face was pale, drained, blood still trickling from his shattered hand. He looked both terrified and proud. "You see," he whispered, "she's awake." "James, stop this!" Maria yelled. "You're hurting her!" He shook his head slowly. "No, Maria, she's remembering. The process is almost complete." "Process?" He gestured toward the glowing console behind her. "She's merging with the neural core, the system Grace and I designed together." Maria's voice broke. "Grace helped you with this?" "She didn't understand what it would become," he said softly. "She thought we were building a therapy machine, a memory stabilizer, but after she died, I found her final recording." He walked closer, his steps echoing. "She said she'd hidden something inside Ella, a code, a message, something to make me stop." His voice lowered to a whisper. "She wanted me to see what I'd done, but I never could. Until now." The machines began to hum louder, screens flashing with thousands of images, home videos, hospital monitors, ultrasound scans, Grace's handwriting, all swirling around Ella's reflection. "James!" Clara shouted. "You're going to overload the system!" He didn't answer. Ella's small hand reached out and touched the console, and every screen froze. Then, Grace's voice, soft, fragile, coming through the speakers like a ghost. "James, if you're hearing this, it means you didn't stop. You promised you'd let her live her own life, not mine, not yours, hers." James stood frozen, lips trembling. "Grace, you made her blind because you couldn't face what she saw that night. But she remembers, and when she remembers, you'll have to too." Ella's eyes welled with tears. "I remember, Daddy," she whispered. "The fire, Mommy screaming, you trying to pull her away." James stepped back. No, it wasn't like that." "She wanted to destroy the machine," Ella continued, voice rising, trembling. "She said it wasn't love if it hurt, but you—" "Stop!" he shouted. "You don't understand." He rushed forward, but the machines reacted. Electricity arced across the floor, throwing him back. Sparks erupted. Smoke filled the room. Maria grabbed Ella and pulled her close, shielding her from the chaos. The screens began to melt into one another, showing flashes of Grace's face, the night of the accident, the machine's ignition, the flames, and James screaming her name. Then, one final image, Grace holding baby Ella in her arms, smiling, whispering, "Promise me you'll see the world through love, not through me." The image faded. The alarms stopped. The room fell silent. James lay on the floor, breathing shallowly, staring blankly at the ceiling, his voice barely audible. "I wanted her to see only beauty, not the ugliness I caused," Maria whispered, "and now she sees everything." Ella knelt beside him. Her tiny hand touched his cheek. "I forgive you, Daddy." Tears slid down his face, and for the first time in years, he smiled. Then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the lab. Only Ella's faint whisper remained. "I can see now, Mommy. I can see everything." When the storm ended, so did the life of the man who built gods from grief. But in the morning, when the police arrived, they found no trace of the machines, only a small girl sitting by the lake watching the sunrise, and she swore she saw her mother's reflection smiling back. The rain had stopped. The mansion stood quiet now, nothing left but ashes and the echo of what once was. The police came at dawn, lights flashing, questions echoing, but Maria barely heard them. She stood by the edge of the lake, her coat soaked, her eyes fixed on the still water. Behind her, paramedics lifted James Kingsley's body into an ambulance. A white sheet covered his face, a genius, a monster, a father. And beside her sat Ella, silent, holding the locket they found clutched in her small hand. It was gold, heart-shaped, etched with a single letter, G. Grace's. Maria knelt beside her. "You kept it?" Ella nodded slowly. "It opened when he died." Maria frowned. "Opened?" Ella handed it to her. Inside the locket wasn't a photo, but a folded piece of paper, yellowed with time, edges burned. Maria carefully unfolded it. There, in Grace's handwriting, were the words, "To whoever finds her, tell her the truth." She wasn't born to be blind. She was born to see what we cannot. Her name isn't Ella Kingsley. It's Maria Grace Kingsley. The world stopped. The wind stilled. The birds fell silent. Maria's heart thundered. What does that mean?" she whispered. Ella looked up at her, those gray eyes shimmering with something ancient, something knowing. "It means you were never hired," she said softly. "You came home." Maria's breath caught in her throat. "No, that's not possible. I have memories, a past." Ella stood and walked toward the lake, her reflection rippling beneath her. "They gave you those memories," she said. "After the fire." Maria took a step back. No, I buried my parents." Ella turned, her voice calm now, too calm for a child. "You buried what he wanted you to remember." A flash of images tore through Maria's mind. The experiments, the diary. Grace's voice, a child crying in the dark. And suddenly she remembered the flames, the hand that dragged her out, the whisper that said, "You'll live again," through her. Her knees buckled. She wasn't the maid. She was Grace, reborn. Through the same experiment that blinded her daughter, the same technology James swore he'd destroyed. Tears streamed down Maria's face as she looked at Ella, and in that reflection, she saw herself. Older, wiser, mother and daughter mirrored across time. Ella took her hand. "Now you see why he hid it," she said. "He couldn't let you remember, because if you did, you'd stop him." Maria's voice broke. "And now that I do?" Ella smiled faintly. "Now, it's over." They stood there together as the sun rose, the lake catching fire with morning gold. Behind them, the mansion finally gave way, collapsing into itself with a groan, as if exhaling a secret too heavy to keep. Maria whispered, "Grace, Maria, whatever I am, I'll protect her. I'll protect you." Ella's voice trembled. "Then the cycle ends." And so it did. The mansion burned to dust. the machine slept beneath the ashes, and two souls, one born of love, the other of loss, walked away from the ruins of a man who tried to rewrite God. But on the wind that morning, as they left the estate behind, came a faint whisper, almost mechanical, almost human. System reboot initiated. The lake rippled. The reflection of the house flickered once, twice, then vanished. Some stories don't end when the truth is found. They end when someone dares to remember. If you were Maria, would you want to know who you truly were? Or would you rather live a lie that feels like peace? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget, subscribe, because next week, another secret rises from the ashes.